How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. By Bill Gates. Why government policies matter. In the 1950s and 1960s, air pollution became a major concern in the US and Europe. Governments responded with policies such as the Clean Air Act and smoke control zones. These policies were effective in reducing air pollution levels. Since 1990, nitrogen dioxide levels in American emissions have dropped by 56%. China is also taking action to reduce air pollution. They've set new targets, banned new coal-fired plants, and limited non-electric cars in large cities. These policies have helped reduce air pollution levels and greenhouse gases. They also illustrate the importance of government policies in addressing public concerns. Energy innovation and regulation. Innovation is not just about developing new devices. It's also about developing new policies to deploy those inventions in the market as fast as possible. Energy is one of the most heavily regulated sectors of the economy. We can leverage this experience to create policies that spur economic growth and energy security. In 1910, only 12% of Americans had electric power in their homes. Thanks to federal funding for dams and government projects, by 1950, more than 90% did. In response to the oil shocks of the 1970s, the U.S. set out to increase domestic production from various energy sources. This led to the creation of the Department of Energy and energy conservation legislation. Governments created jobs and spurred investment by putting money into renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electricity infrastructure. This led to economic recovery after the Great Recession of 2008. The role of government in decarbonizing the global economy. Achieving zero carbon emissions requires the vision and intervention of national and subnational governments around the world. Government officials can write rules to regulate carbon emissions from power plants, cars, and factories. Governments can also shape financial markets and clarify the risks of climate change to the private and public sectors. They can invest in scientific research and write the rules that determine how quickly new products can get to market. Government intervention is necessary in massive undertakings such as building national highway systems and vaccinating the world's children. Businesses and individuals will need to do their part, but governments must create the right incentives and make sure the overall system works for everyone. 7 high-level goals that governments should aim for zero carbon emissions. 1. Mind the investment gap. Did you know that companies in the energy industry spend an average of just 0.3% of their revenue on energy R&D? This is a stark contrast to industries like electronics and pharmaceuticals that spend nearly 10% and 13% respectively on R&D. The private sector underinvests in R&D on energy because there's no guarantee that investing in clean electrons will make money. Government policies and financing are needed to close the gap, especially in areas where we need to invent new zero-carbon technologies. Investing in research can help create businesses that export their products to other countries, ultimately reducing global emissions. R&D is most effective when paired with demand-side incentives to ensure businesses turn scientific ideas into products. 2. Leveling the playing field. Reducing green premiums is crucial in the fight against climate change. This can be done by making carbon-free things cheaper and carbon-emitting things more expensive. Externalities, such as carbon emissions, impose a real cost on society. Governments can nudge producers and consumers towards more efficient decisions by progressively increasing the price of carbon. 3. Overcoming non-market barriers. Non-market barriers, such as a lack of information, trained personnel, or incentives, can hinder progress. Governments can make a big difference by implementing the right policies. 4. Staying up to date. Sometimes government policies themselves make it hard to decarbonize. We can ensure that standards reflect the latest advances in technology and the urgency of getting to zero. 5. Plan for a just transition. Transitioning to a carbon-neutral economy is a complex task. It requires a just transition that addresses the concerns of communities that rely on extracting fossil fuels. States like Texas and North Dakota will need to replace jobs and tax revenue. Low-income people will feel the burden of green premiums more than most. Local leaders will need to shape solutions that vary from place to place. The federal government can help by providing funding and technical advice. 6. Do the hard stuff too. We need to focus on the hard parts too, like electricity storage and clean fuels. Investing in R&D and using policies designed for breakthroughs is key. We can't just go after the low-hanging fruit. We need a comprehensive approach that addresses the challenges and opportunities of transitioning to a carbon-neutral economy. 7. Work on technology, policy, and markets at the same time. Markets, technology, and policy are the three levers we need to pull to wean ourselves from fossil fuels. All three have to work in complementary ways. Without the right policies and approach to markets, scientific and engineering work on advanced reactors will go nowhere. Most countries don't have workable ways to establish supply chains and validate designs. Biofuels show us the challenge of making sure we know what problem we're trying to solve and tuning our policies accordingly. Simply passing legislation is not enough. The Renewable Fuel Standard set targets for how much biofuel the country would use in the coming years. Ethanol production quickly exceeded the targets, but corn-based ethanol is not a long-term solution. We need to work together to find long-term solutions that work for both the environment and the economy. It's time to prioritize the three levers of energy transition. The challenge of biofuels. Biofuels were supposed to solve the problem of rising oil prices and climate change. But the advanced alternatives have lagged far behind their target. Setting a biofuels target was a fine way to reduce oil imports, but not effective in lowering emissions. Policymakers need to be clear about their goals and aware of the technologies they're promoting. Solar technology had improved by the early 1990s, but wasn't widely adopted. Germany gave the market a boost with low-interest loans and a fixed government payment for excess solar power. Installed wind capacity has grown by an average of 20% a year. Wind is growing because it's getting cheaper. The Danish government put a lot of money into renewable energy R&D. They did something unusual and it paid off.